Does the noise ever get too loud? Do you find yourself needing to escape? Not the work, responsibility, just a noise. An electric hum of society, conversations a million miles wide and 2 inches deep. Modern technology has enabled some inconceivable possibilities. Satellites circle the globe, extending the reach of connection. I recently purchased Starlink and decided to test it out in this collaboration video. Normally I shoot these in my home studio as internet access is an essential element to collaborative content, but thanks to many people much smarter than me, I'm heading to the hills. And this weekend is especially beautiful. I didn't think that was going to work, but I was able to get us online. So fortunately, every now and then I have 1 bar of cell signal right here. And so fortunately, I was able to get enough of a signal to find out that my account wasn't activated. Now that's crazy because I activated my account at home when I tested this, but for whatever reason, I guess it didn't show as activated. So I had to go through that process again. And did have a successful activation this time, and we're showing online right now. I came up to the top of this ridge. We've got a nice little dusting of ice and a little bit of snow. In Arkansas, you know, we don't get this super frequently. So anytime it hits, I find myself wanting to go camp in it. No, a lot of people think that's crazy, but man, winter camping, it's like one of my favorite things. No bugs, no people, get the place to yourself. That being said, you do need to be prepared to camp in environments like this in order to have a good time. Nobody likes being brutally cold. Nobody likes waking up and their feet are icy in the middle of the night. So being prepared makes this super doable and enjoyable. And so here's what I did. Reached out to a couple of my buddies, other YouTubers that overland and off-road and do all this stuff. And I said, hey, what are some products or tips and tricks? What are some things that you would say make winter camping more doable? I'm not gonna say the obvious stuff. I'll save that for some of the other guys. I'm sure heaters are gonna, show up and gonna be mentioned. Oh my goodness, it's so cold. This wind is kicking my butt. I hope it's not too loud in the mic. But no, for me, the biggest thing is if I can keep my feet warm, I can camp basically any time of the year. When my feet get cold, it's hard to warm them back up after they get like that deep chill, you know what I'm talking about? There are good wool socks. You can buy good wool socks. That makes a huge difference. Darn Tough, I love Darn Tough. This is not sponsored in any way. I buy those wool socks, man, and they've got ones rated for like different seasons. Get the ones that are rated for like the sub-zero temps. Those things are killer. And then I love the Omni-Heat Columbia boots. They kind of look like they have aluminum foil on the inside. It just really traps all the warmth from your foot into that boot. That makes a big difference. So that's my recommendation. Good socks, good wool socks, good boots. Now, let's pitch it to my next buddy and see what he says makes winter camping more doable for him.
Hey there, Fletcher from Things Overlanding here, and let me start by saying thanks to Caleb for having me be a part of this collab video. Of course, you can see I'm in the snow. I actually drove up to Michigan. We got about 8 to 10 inches of snow last night. It's snowing right now. It's going to snow through tonight, and then tomorrow morning we're going to have to get up and drive home. But today I wanted to talk about my solutions for staying warm in winter weather like this. I know everybody talks about their diesel heaters. Of course I do have a diesel heater and I love it very much. It makes the trip a lot better, but I know everybody's going to talk about that, so I'm going to leave that over there for now and just say they're great, and if you want one, you definitely should consider one. But today I wanted to talk about another option that I think would work in a lot of conditions. Maybe not quite this extreme. It's going to be single digits or negative temps tonight, so I definitely will be running the diesel heater. But in the 20s, 30s, things like that, there are a lot of options that are much simpler, much less complex than a diesel heater. You don't have to worry about fuel. You don't have to worry as much about powering those things and the specific power needs that you would be required to fulfill for a diesel heater. And one of those is a heated blanket. And there's all kinds of different heated blankets, from $20, $30 ones that plug in via a DC plug that you'll see on Amazon, to something as sort of fancy and nice as this Zoli that runs about 180-ish, $200, somewhere in that ballpark. But this is what I ended up going with, and I will tell you why. So the Zoli blanket is really, really nice for a couple reasons. One, it comes with its own really high capacity battery bank. So rather than, again, having to rely on some sort of a big power station or having power coming out of your vehicle, potentially killing your starter battery, to run a heated blanket, which has pretty large power needs of its own, this one comes with a battery, which is what I really like about it. So I will plug it into the battery and use this thing overnight, and it will usually go for about 6 to 7 hours depending on what setting you have it on. So you just need to make sure that you're aware of that it could go off in the middle of the night if you start really early. But aside from that, it's so nice. It's a nice size blanket. It's got sort of a waterproof side and some buttons on it that you can actually use to wear the thing like a jacket almost. So if you want to sit around camp with the thing running and the battery pack on it, you could do that. And then it's got a really nice sort of soft, fleecy kind of lining on the inside. So again, when you're laying down, you're sleeping, having this thing over top of your sleeping bag is kind of a game changer when it comes to staying warm, because you've got that heating element in the heated blanket. Again, with this one too, you also get this really nice bag. It's got couple of handles on it, and then it's got a shoulder strap, so it makes carrying it really easy. And then it's got a pocket on the side that's also waterproof that you can keep your battery bank in, and you can keep your charging cords and your instructions and that sort of thing. So super, super easy to use. Again, I made a video on this whole thing, so if you want to learn more about this thing, I will have Caleb put a link in the description down below to that video, but go check that out to learn even more about this thing. But a heated blanket is a great option if you're not in super extreme conditions where you need a diesel heater. Thanks to Caleb for having me. I hope that was helpful for you guys, and I'd love it if you'd come over and check out my channel. Again, it's called All Things Overlanding, so I'd love to have you over there as well. I do a ton of gear reviews, Nissan Frontier truck mods and things like that, and then also just general overlanding. So again, thanks to Caleb for having me, and we'll see you next time.
Dude, awesome recommendation. I actually thought that I was going to know all the products that were going to be mentioned on this, and that's new to me. So I'm definitely going to be checking that out. Love it. It's getting really cold. The sun is starting to set. I started filming this at a bad time, so it's fixing to get dark. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pitch it to my next buddy who's going to tell you about his recommendation. I'm going to get a fire started if I can in this wind. And so when you cut back to me, we'll be getting warm around a fire. But y'all listen to this next tip.
Having a heater has been important for me for several years. Originally, it was a way for me to encourage my wife to come with me on winter trips, but more recently, it has been even more important for keeping a regulated temperature for my toddler. It's really difficult to manage layers on him as he sleeps, and I have no way to ask him if he's too cold during the night. I've used diesel heaters before and have had several issues with the cheap ones, so I decided to go with something that's a little more reliable. And that's why I ended up with the Propex HS2211, which, like diesel heaters, is a heat exchanger, but unlike the diesel heaters, it runs on propane. It still has all of the advantages of a diesel heater. There's no open flame with the fire risk. You got that nice, dry, hot air, and no carbon monoxide risk with proper use. The Propex is a self-contained weatherproof heater that's designed to be mounted on the underside of a van or trailer, but it can be just as easily mounted in a box or simply placed on the ground or on the roof rack next to your tent. It comes with a simple thermostat that goes inside your tent and allows you to set the heat at different levels, or you can buy the upgraded thermostat that allows you to set a specific temperature. Because of the high price, I don't think the Propex is for everyone. If you're just out for weekend trips or you're no more than a few hours from home, then a diesel heater will probably suit you just fine, even if they're less reliable because you can just go home if they fail. Having had and having seen so many problems with them, there's no way that I would trust a diesel heater on a trip where I'm away for several weeks at a time, especially when I'm several days away from home, and especially not with my toddler in the tent with me.
Thanks, Rob. Great suggestion. Keeping those babies warm, that's the most important thing. Definitely resonates with me. The Propex propane heater was new to me, but I'm going to check that out. That looks really cool. If I was more north doing longer term trips like you, I could totally see that being a lot more valuable than maybe a diesel heater. Next up, I'm going to pitch it to my buddy Jason from Live2Day Wonderland. Now, I just met Jason a couple weeks ago. We just met, and I told him I was doing this collab, asked him if he wanted to be a part, and he said yeah. So I'm super stoked to have him on here. Y'all listen to what he had to say.
Caleb, thanks for having us. My name is Jason from Live2Day Wonderland. We are based in the Midwest. We primarily camp in northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, upper peninsula of Michigan. And for us, winter camping is a way of life, because if we're not winter camping, we're sitting home most of the year, and we don't want to do that. We kind of pride ourselves on being very experienced winter campers, kind of gone through several variations over the years of gear and how to prepare and stay warm in winter. And our favorite way is hot tenting with a wood stove. And a lot of people aren't going to know what that is, but it's okay. It's very popular up north and in Canada. It's a wood-fired stove with a vent pipe that goes out through the tent. You process wood in a certain size, you feed the stove all night, and it gets toasty warm inside the tent. We've had it up to 90 degrees in the tent, and it can be below zero outside, and you're sleeping good. The downside is you have to feed the wood every hour or two. There's ways to mitigate that. You can put a sawdust block in there and it'll go a little bit longer, but it doesn't last all night. And if you want to keep feeding it all night, you're not sleeping all night really well. The most important thing with winter camping and staying warm, the first line of defense is obviously your layers of clothing and your sleeping bag, stuff like that. You always need to have that as your primary source of heat. Don't rely on diesel heaters, wood stoves, or anything else. Always be prepared. If something happens, you can survive with a good sleeping bag and your clothing. But we love hot tenting. The wood stove is awesome. Not only does it provide a really nice, dry, warm heat, you can cook on it. So we can cover two bases with one. We're cooking on here, heating our water, skillet goes on here. It's awesome. Like I said, we go out all the time. We camp year round, and we kind of fashion ourselves as expert winter campers. We've camped in temperatures as low as minus 16 degrees Fahrenheit. Just this last week, we were in a blizzard with 14 inches of snow, and we were in our hot tent. We have slept in our teardrop, which does not have heat. So we've camped in our teardrop without heat with our layers and blankets. We switched to hot tenting in the winter from the teardrop because it's just better overall. And at times, like this week, we did just bring out our teardrop in the blizzard, but we lounged in the hot tent as our living room and hung out in there and just slept in the teardrop with our sleeping bags. You can't beat the hot tent and the wood stove. Highly recommend it. It's a little bit costly to get into. I'm trying to figure out a way to put a wood stove in my teardrop. But our Pomali stove here is awesome and puts out a ton of heat. Like I said, just recently, about a month ago, we had the tent up to 90 degrees inside, and I was sweating to death. Like, you had to open the door and get some of that cold air in. Not only is it great to have a nice, dry, warm heat, you can cook on it also, and the ambiance of the wood stove when you're trying to sleep is awesome. This one happens to have 3 sides of glass, so you're laying there on your sleeping mat or cot, and the wood just popping and crackling, and then the glow of the fire is just amazing. It's super peaceful to sleep by, and that's why we love it. And let us know if you have any questions. We appreciate the collaboration, and we will see you guys soon.
Jason, man, that thing is so cool. You definitely won the award for the product with the coolest vibes. Wood burning, stove in the tent it's just awesome. I love it. So thanks so much for sharing, man. All right, you're about to hear from my friend Ian next. Ian is a doctor and an overlander, and he has a channel called Doc Wrangler. It's super cool. I think every off-road group needs an MD in the mix. Ian's one of the coolest I know. So you guys listen up to what the doc orders.
It is wintertime and it is cold. We still love to get out here, and the boys, you can see their sleds in the background. They have been trudging up and down this short little hill. There's actually a bigger hill behind, which is they've been having a lot of fun on. When you come out here if you're gonna camp in a rooftop tent, you have to stay warm. There's several ways you can do it. On the table behind me, I've got an electric blanket, a forced air heater, a little thing that keeps your hands warm, as well as a buddy heater and a little buddy heater. And then up top on the tent, I'm actually now using a diesel heater, which is a complete game changer when it comes to cold weather camping. Let's start with the one that's really most essential, and that's an electric blanket, a 12-volt electric blanket. There's something you should know before you get one, and that is get one that has a 3-stage at least heating, so it can either be low, medium, or hot in terms of temperature, but then also there's a timer on it. So this can go for 30 minutes, 45, or 60 minutes, and then it shuts off. Yeah, it's kind of a pain sometimes if you have to hit the button again later, but what you're doing is saving so much electricity. Going from most essential to the one that I really just don't even use anymore, and that is this little 12-volt forced air heater. Now, this thing draws a ton of electricity, and it really doesn't put out that much heat for the amount of electricity that it pulls. That being said, I still carry it because it's kind of super small. You know, really, it's maybe a backup in case my diesel heater wasn't working. I might plug this in. The newest addition to the crew is this little guy. This is a rechargeable hand warmer, and man, it gets hot. I have 2 of these. I give one of them each to the boys as they're just kind of tooling around camp in the snow. They keep it in their pocket, and they love it. The fact it's rechargeable, I love it. You can use it to charge your phone and devices and things as well, so it's pretty cool. All right, let me show you this diesel heater. So I've taken the diesel heater and put it inside of this toolbox. You can see I'm running some ducting into the actual tent itself, and then here's what I'm doing with the exhaust. I extended the exhaust with this copper pipe just because I didn't want that close, although really, it probably doesn't need to be that far away. That's just, for me, I like to have all the fumes as far away from the tent as possible. This little rack that I have up here is something that I can take on and off the Jeep. I have it mounted into a little trailer hitch you can see there. And I don't put a ton of stuff up here because it's not, I don't think the rack is meant to hold weight in that way. But I do use it, so I put the sleds on it as we came out, and then I'll put the heater on it when we're static and not going on the trail. Hopefully that was helpful. Maybe now next time we'll see you out here in the snow.
Thanks, Doc. Great products there. Lastly, we've got my buddy Kevin with Rhino Offroad. Now, Kevin is like a real-life Top Gun overlander. He is a fighter jet pilot in the military, which automatically makes him the coolest overlander you know.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin with Rhino Offroad. I'm a full-time pilot and a part-time adventurer and overlander who spends my weekends exploring the high Sierra in my Jeep Wrangler. One of the questions that I most frequently get asked on my channel is how I stay warm when I'm camping way up in the Sierra at single-digit Fahrenheit temperatures. Well, the answer to that is this, the Mr. Heater Buddy. For those of you that are not familiar, the Mr. Heater Buddy is essentially a propane heater. It has a bunch of safety mechanisms on it, a carbon monoxide detector, a low oxygen detector, and those kind of things. But is this actually safe? Well, that's the second question that I most frequently get. And then the third question is, okay, assuming this is safe, do you get a lot of condensation in your tent? So we're going to address all 3 of these things in today's video. I'm going to basically plug the Mr. Heater Buddy into a 5-pound propane tank, and I'm going to run it all night long. Now I'm going to run it like I normally do on low because in the confines of my iCamper Skycamp, high is just too much heat. For this small space, it's just not needed. So I'm going to run it on low. However, what I'm going to do differently than what I normally do when I'm camping is I'm going to close up all the zippers. So we'll be in the iCamper here, totally enclosed, no ventilation at all. Now I'm going to use a couple of sensors here. So this one detects carbon dioxide as well as oxygen concentration of the air. This one does carbon dioxide as well, but also does humidity and temperature. It's basically set up an experiment where I can run a time lapse. We'll run it for 12 hours. I'm going to take 1 photo every minute, and we'll basically see what the highest carbon monoxide and lowest oxygen concentrations that we get, and then we'll compare that to what is considered safe. I just climbed up into the iCamper and shut off the Mr. Heater Buddy. We had a 12-hour time lapse running, and I took 1 photo every single minute. So looked through the footage real quick, and the results are pretty interesting. Starting off for carbon monoxide. So looking it up on the EPA website, it says that the current OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, permissible exposure limit is 50 parts per million. While the orange detector saw a peak of 29 parts per million, and the white one saw a peak of 22 parts per million. So about half of what OSHA says is permissible exposure. Now when it came to oxygen concentration, which is again the big other concern with a propane heater in a enclosed space like this. Nominally, the atmosphere is about 21% oxygen and the rest of nitrogen and other gases. Well, the minimum that we saw was 19.8% oxygen concentration level. Going back to the EPA website, it says EPA considers any atmosphere with an oxygen level below 19.5% to be oxygen deficient. Thus, again, we were above what OSHA considers to be an oxygen deficient environment. Is this going to change how I sleep with the Mr. Heater Buddy? Well, no. Especially with my kids, I would love to hit the I believe button and say that this thing is totally safe, but obviously it's just not worth the risk. So how do I actually use the Heater Buddy? Well, I will use it to fully heat the tent before I get in it at night. I will leave it running while we're getting comfortable and in bed, and then the last thing I do before I fall asleep is turn it off. I'll leave it off throughout the night until morning, when the first thing I do when I wake up is turn it back on and start preheating the tent. According to Mr. Heater Buddy, this unit is safe to use in a confined space. Really, what I wanted to do here is at least give you guys the data so that you can make the decision for yourself. But no matter what, I do recommend if you are going to use your portable heater, you have to vent it. Open up the top vent a little bit because a lot of that heat can escape up anyways, and then you can crack the side panels as well. And this will allow fresh ventilation to continually enter the tent.
Great stuff, Kevin. Thank you for the deep dive there. Now listen, all of these channels, I've put links to their full channels down below, and if they actually did a full video review, some of these guys did, of the products that they shared in this collab today, I'm going to put those links down there as well, and you can check that stuff out. It is getting so cold, and I need to get inside quick. So I'm going to wrap up this video here. I really appreciate that you guys sticking with me and watching, and I hope that this was informative and helpful and gave you some good tools, tips, and products to use when you winter camp in the future as well. Appreciate you guys as always. Like, comment, subscribe, do that stuff. Help me hit 10K. It'd mean a ton. We're getting close. We're getting really close. But more importantly, remember, the more you camp, the less deer the aliens abduct.